Welcome everyone tonight to the Finish Line, as we will talk about, has the Miami Dolphins rebuild failed up until this point? Also, should the Miami Dolphins split up Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, considering Jaylen Waddle's usage in year one compared to it in year two? Hint, that's probably not a great idea. Plus, we'll talk about Frank Smith and his chances of landing a head coaching job, the fallout the fans felt from the KC and Miami game, plus some damning numbers that back what I've been saying for years. Danny Crossman should not be the special teams coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. We're going to talk about it all tonight. Do us a favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. Let's get into it.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jaylen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field down the near side, that open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it over the touchdown. He's in. Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
All right, huddle up, huddle up. We're gonna crank these engines up on one. All right? Wait, 80. Wait, set. Drivers, start your engines.
This is the Finish Line.
I coached some great offensive linemen in the past. Larry Little, Dwight Stevenson, Jim Langer, all Hall of Famers, and Richmond Webb belongs to that same group.
Here are your hosts, legendary Miami Dolphins left tackle Richmond Webb, Reason, and Mr. BallGame.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we're back here for another one as we welcome you into the Finish Line. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, the legendary Richmond Webb, the triple OG, Mr. BallGame. Gentlemen, 7th time we're meeting the season after a loss, and it is the final time we are meeting after a Dolphins game. Well, shout out to Ryan Roberts. What's going on, homie? It is the last time we are meeting together after a game this season. Then again, hey, if you count the Pro Bowl, and if we have a show after the Pro Bowl, maybe that counts. I don't know. But how you feeling, Richmond? How you feeling, BallGame?
I'm all right. I think everybody was a little disappointed after the game on Saturday. Even if we didn't win, I thought we'd have a little bit better showing offensively. I knew it was going to be more of a struggle defensively when we had all three of our outside pass rushers out, got to start corner out. But for the most part, I thought the defense did pretty decent to kind of keep us in the game. This and that. I think it was just frustrating offensively that we wasn't able to really get any kind of continuity going or get some drive sustained, this and that. So anytime you lose a game like that, playoff games, and then people start reflecting on, if we'd have won this game, that game, back to back, we didn't have to be in this position. And I think that's what's so frustrating for the fans is we had an opportunity to have a home playoff game and then to lose the game and then to lose it to Buffalo, which is one of our biggest rivals. I think it was just a lot of weighing factors. So after we lost that game, I knew people was going to be really, really upset, and then people a lot of time will get upset. They say things and don't really think about what they're saying, but it's been a few days now, and I feel better. It's just, I look at 11 wins. We've made progress. Tua did stay healthy the whole year. It's different things that you kind of look at. I think you look at it on paper at the beginning of the season with the acquisitions we made. I thought this would be one of the best teams in the league, but injuries, of course, do play a factor in this game. And I think it definitely affected, the Dolphins this year. But, you deal with the hand you dealt, and that's it. So, we're out now, and let's get ready to make those moves to see how we can improve this team and become better and come back next year and do better than what we did this year.
The elephant in the room is the injuries, says James. Ask your boy how Dan Marino played when Dwight Stevenson was injured. How you feeling, BallGame? Muted.
Obviously, this is not how we wanted things to end. I'm a little disappointed early on, right after after that all happened, and came up and we talked about it after the game on Saturday. But when I take a look back, man, when I take back a look at what I thought were going to be keys for success for this team over the course of the season, and the changes and the growth that not only the players but the coaches will have to make. Some of that stuff happened in some areas that we were unexpected, like the final emergence of AVG. Man, there's a lot of good things that happened. But the thing that hurt us the most was still the unfortunate lack of game management, play calling, and things like that from the head coach. And you can't effectively beat some of the better teams in the league if you're not clicking on all cylinders. And we limped in. The injuries definitely derailed. We were lucky early on in the season. It's one of those things now where they say you'd rather be hurt early than late. And unfortunately, ours hit at such crucial points throughout the season that we limped in and just didn't have enough, man. And it'd be like that sometimes. But I'm with Richmond in terms of the wins total went up. We're moving and trending in the right directions, and all those things are positives for me. I don't look at things the same way most people look at them. I look at this as when we left Flores, although they played Tua in his rookie year and all that other stuff. For me, those seasons are a wash because you turn right back around and you get rid of Flores, and then you go in and you hire a whole new coach with a whole new philosophy and in offense, and everything kind of starts all over from scratch. So for me, Tua is on year 2 with McDaniels, and I've seen nothing but progress of him moving the needle in the right direction, and those things are positives for me. And I'd rather trend and talk about the positives than the negatives. The negatives are always going to be there until they change them, and I don't see the point in beating a dead horse about things that ultimately anybody could point out a bunch of negatives, but things that can be tangibly changed and they can actually work on doing to make better. Those are the things that I'd rather see them focus on, and a lot of that just comes down to the X and O's of the process that really don't have anything to do with the players themselves. I think these guys left all that they had on the field. It's tough sometimes to go into games like that with what I consider to be mercenaries, because Justin Houston was not a guy that was in the mix and in the grind with us down the stretch and things like that. And you asking him to go out there and be emotionally tied to doing this job when it's just a paycheck at this point for them guys. But I'm okay. I think this team's headed in the right direction. They have some major decisions to be made, which we'll discuss tonight. But at the end of the day, 11-5 is better than 5-11. It's also better than 10-6, better than 10-7. And making the playoffs is one thing. Now we just got to now this team has to truly learn now how to win the games that matter, and I believe they'll do it. So I'm okay. A lot of shockers, a lot of things that happened over the course of last weekend that people didn't anticipate that I thought were. I wasn't so shocked about that. Could be worse. We could have been sitting at home watching everybody, but we'll get it figured out. I'm optimistic.
Optimism is hard to
I know,
find
right?
right now because Dolphin fans don't really want to hear it at all, right? Like that's pretty much where we're at with that. But
I
okay,
think
so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Let's get into this. So okay, we're 4 years deep now. 2 head coaches have had 2 years
Mhm.
each. All right, started off 10-6 and 9-8. Now, and then we went 9-8 and 11-6 in the last 4 years. Back-to-back playoff appearances, lost in the wild card round each time. I mean, you saw we boasted, went from a number 10 offense to the number 1 offense this year. You saw the defense, the transition from Boyer to Fangio and how successful they got. But again, same old thing with this franchise, not just this roster. This is a thing with this franchise in big moments and stuff. So, and since we made the Tunsil trade, when everyone keys into that is when we started our rebuild. The Houston Texans, they've drafted CJ Stroud and they've won a playoff game. They've also drafted Deshaun Watson and won a playoff game too. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. When you look back at this right now, so far, 5 years now, about to head into 5-year rebuild. We're about to head into year 5, basically. Because 2019 was a wash. Has this rebuild been a failure so far in terms of we gave up all these assets. We've used all these first round picks at the beginning of it to get Jackson, to get Tua, to get Robert Hunt, to load up, right? Javon Holland, Jalen Phillips, Jalen Waddle, to load up in those first 2 years. Then we've added Tyreek Hill. We've added Jalen Ramsey. At one point, we had Byron Jones in here. We've added big ticket items as well. Teron Armstead to supplement this guy. And a lot of the, a theme with a lot of those guys is they're injury prone. But I digress. To this point, with no playoff wins and everything that's been financially and draft asset wise invested into this up to this point, do you guys view it, at least up until this point, to one or the two, success or failure? Richmond, start with you.
First of all, the first thing I would say is I don't look to compare the Dolphins to the Texans or whatever like that. I look at comparing them to all 32 teams. And I think the acquisitions we made, I think, you've seen progress there. I don't have an issue with that. I mean, I think it took Austin Jackson. Like I said, last year he got hurt. This is one of the names you brought up. But this year, I thought he played well enough to make the Pro Bowl or whatever like that. We win a couple more games. I think he's in there. But he was probably the most consistent guy that we had this year. So the type of year he had. I think Jaylen Waddle, I think he's shown that he can be that guy. For some reason, we've got to find a way to spread the ball around and be more consistent rather than, I think sometimes we go too heavy one way or another where we don't utilize all the weapons we have and to maximize on the talent that we do have. So there are some things we need to be worked out. But like you say, this is McDaniel's year 2, adding Fangio and pieces on the defense, this and that. I don't consider it a failure. I think we are trending in the right. I think we're trending in the right direction. Even when Eichenberg, there were times he struggled, but as he continued to play, he's not there yet. But to me, he's making progress. Is it slower than what people probably want? Yeah, it probably is. But I think we've made acquisitions to where the main thing I do is being able to keep these guys healthy. And when you have an overabundance of injuries, it can affect the results. And then, just like BallGame said, I think McDaniel is learning this different from being an offense coordinator and being the head coach and management of the game and this and that, and knowing when to do this, when to do that, when to make the adjustments, this and that. I think with adding Fangio this year, that took a element of pressure off of him based on the defense. But there are other factors I think he's learned. This is the first time he's been a head coach. So I consider it a success. I think, when you ask that question right after, you lose the last 3 or 4 games at the end of the season, everybody's like, get rid of this guy, get rid of that, blow it up, fire
Well, I think it's
Greer,
because the
start over.
expectations were so high with how you looked at this roster and what had been pieced together, right? It was basically at minimum, if you talk to anyone, at minimum, people wanted one playoff win. Other people expected them to contend for an AFC championship, and some expected them to go to the Super Bowl. But with what was invested, it was pretty much understood that we need to at least win a playoff game, right?
Yeah, I think we had a chance to win. I think it wasn't because necessarily. I think it could have been the game possibly could have been managed better. I do think losing certain players in key position affected it. But I thought even if we lost that game, I think if we would have lost that game to Kansas City and it would have been not so one sided, I think it would have been a little bit easier for the fans to kind of like swallow. So, okay, at least we left it out there on the field. I'm not saying the players didn't play hard, but if it's a field goal that decides that or a touchdown, it's different. But when you score one touchdown and it's nothing else, and everybody's looking at like, man, here we go again, and once it starts rolling, it just steamrolls downhill. So I think it's something we got to learn from. I think that one thing I do know, and I think you know at BallGame, the thing you got to do is get yourself in the best position to where you can at least have home games, and that's by either winning the division. And I think what's frustrating is we had an opportunity to be the number 2 seed in the AFC at worst. And when you let that slip through, that's hard for people to let that go. And you go from 2 to 6, and then you go to Kansas City.
I think it's harder, Richmond, when the week before that you got blown out. You didn't let it slip through. You got blown out for the 1 seed. Then you go home, which is what you're supposed to be fighting for, the home field advantage to the playoffs, face another good team. You have the lead. Special teams blows it. And then it's a downhill spiral from there. And then the offense can't get anything going. Like, you let the 1 seed, the 2 seed, and the AFC East crown. And it really all comes back to the Titans game. I mean, we could talk about the last 2 games.
You can even go back to that one.
Well, that's the game. You had 3 minutes left. You're up by 2 scores. That should be a wrap. That should be done. Right? I mean.
Yeah, I think that's why everybody's frustrated, because it wasn't just the whole season. We were up 2 games, down 3 games. We were pretty consistent, and then we lost games that, like you even analyzed the first Kansas City game, a couple of turnovers here and there. We still had an opportunity to win that game. And I think if the second game against Kansas City was like that, it might be a little bit easier to swallow. But like you say, when you
Richmond, we caught Philly when they were playing good football. If we would have caught them in the back half of the season, we probably would have whooped them.
And they went to the Super Bowl, so they're not happy in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That's the game. That's all I can tell you, man.
But I mean, tell you, another thing I think that needs to be looked into, and I'm going to look into with a video this offseason. That's 2 years in a row, with or without Tua. At the end of the year, this offense has, right? Because even remember go back and remember the Bills game, right? That defense was keeping us in that playoff game.
Oh, no question.
Skyler only threw for 1 touchdown and threw 2 picks. He wasn't lighting them up. You know what I mean? And you look at what did we beat? Didn't we beat what did we win? 9-7 or something like that to beat New York to even get in the playoffs? Like, offense just all of a sudden went stagnant with or without 2 of the last 2 years in a row at the end of the season. This is a bigger than a quarterback thing, and I'm going to explore it this season for sure. BallGame, what are your thoughts up until this point? Failure, success? What are you seeing this as?
I have a different approach and a different outlook, man, in terms of how I see where we are collectively as a team in this organization. Only because I know and have been, for personal experience, involved in rebuilds, right? And it's something that happens, even though it's at the high school level, it happens pretty much every year, right? When you have a really strong crop of seniors that wind up leaving, and then the juniors and the sophomores have to step up to take the place and backfield and all that other stuff. And you have a coach on your organization that's been with you for 7-8 years, and then he decides to go take a head coaching job somewhere else. New people come in, all these different nuances of things you have to work through. We added a lot of talent. So along with bringing in those talent and the acquisition of the talent brings about a whole different level of anticipation of things that person may have done somewhere else to come here and just be the added piece to what you're missing. But you have to factor in also that there's a learning curve. Anytime these guys move from point A to point B to point C, somebody new is in charge of calling the things that they're going to be required an individual to do. And unfortunately, our process is a little slower. I mean, it's on track, I believe, but it's not a player issue. It's the lack of growth from our primary signal caller, which is coming from the sideline. The Mike smack dab for me is he had a freshman, he hit the freshman wall, and he hit the sophomore slump because he's never right. Now, I don't know. I did some looking around to see where it was that he actually called plays at this level before. He was a running game coordinator in San Francisco. The guy that's down in Houston, he had an opportunity. That Shanahan let him call a couple of games previously before, but I don't recall that ever happening with Mike. And when you're the running game guy and your forte was the running game over the passing game, you know what I'm saying? That's the areas that we fell off in. If you look at a lot of the concepts that we ran, things of that nature that were put on the field, in the most simplistic way to put it, we had basic concepts with motion that complicated them. Most of the concepts, unfortunately, had 2 or 3 guys in the same spaces, occupying the same area, which can be guarded by 2 people. So you didn't really do a maximum job. And he's unfortunately down the stretch, there was no changes to things that made those concepts dangerous, right? You could just guard them with 1 or 2 guys, and then those entire 3 players were walled off from you, and then weren't accessible to your quarterback, which left your quarterback standing in the backfield, patting the ball, trying to find somebody. So when people ask the question in regards to why can't Tua find someone to throw to, I think it was play design or the lack thereof creativity in the play designs on the passing games that led to that. And unfortunately, we're smack dab in the midst of Mike deciding for himself as a professional, am I going to be the head coach, or do I want to have my ego still in place and I want to call plays like the rest of my guys do? LaFleur ran into the same issue. The only issue that didn't happen in Green Bay for him was the fact that he had Aaron Rodgers, who was already a veteran quarterback, that said, no, tell me what you need. Well, I'll make it happen on the field. And there's reports, right? There's reports that LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers used to get into full-fledged arguments about what the play calls were, but that's having a veteran in place. That's not the relationship that Mike and Tua has, so we're left to have to deal with them two having to work those things out together. And I think over the course, right, I say it's patience that I have because I've seen this. I've seen this firsthand happen before when you get the new quarterback that's replacing the guy that you had for the previous year that was a starter for the last 3 years, and then a guy transfers into your program. He's learning your whole new system, and you got to go through this learning curve with your signal caller and your OC trying to build their relationship. And it's a tough one. And unfortunately, that's what's unfolding in front of us, in my opinion. Now, the things that we do, the only other thing that pisses me off about this team is that the areas that we could have helped ourselves, we still didn't. We still had stupid penalties in spots that limited us. And you can't have players going out having making bonehead plays and doing things that put you and set you back when you're dealing with your coach over here also trying to look at that huge ass sheet that he has and trying to figure out the perfect play, because that's a double whammy. So to some, it's probably gonna sound like an excuse, but the truth of the matter is that this team is still growing and still trying to figure out how to win. I thought this would be something that they would have crossed in the early phase of the year, like week 7 or week 8. Then you gel in the middle. You have your little ups and downs and humps when you hit those key crucial games where we had Kansas City and Philly, but you push through those, figure out, write the notes, make the check in the box that you got it figured out, and you move on from it. But we were our own worst enemy down the stretch, because I do firmly believe that we looked past Tennessee. That hurt us. That stole some momentum from us. And at the same time, we lost a lot of discipline on the back end, because we started making bonehead plays on both sides of the ball that really and truthfully was just uncharacteristic of what we had done in the first 7-8 weeks of the season. So, failure in regards to the rebuild, I'd say no, not yet, but it definitely, if we don't progress to at least win a playoff game and get somewhere in that wild card or division around next year, I mean, get in the division around or pass the division around next year, then I'd definitely say yeah, because 3 years is enough time for these guys to figure out whether they're the problem. And Mike really has to look back over this year as a head coach and tell him and ask himself, am I really and truly prepared to be the guy to do this? Do I need my ego stroked to the point where I got to be the one receiving all of the fame or all of the acclaim for calling the plays, or can I trust somebody else to do this and I just go be a head coach because I'm getting paid for it? Because D'Amico ain't calling plays. His offensive coordinator has a really good relationship with the quarterback, and that's one that you need, right? But how much can you focus on that when you got the whole team to look over? You see what I'm saying? And I know for a fact, because I had to do it for a couple seasons. Standing on that sideline, trying to call plays from that sideline is damn near murder. But head coach should be on the sideline dealing with the referees.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not trying to call plays.
That's why Fangio was in the booth, right? Fangio was in the booth.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
As a coordinator, he goes in the booth. As a head coach, he goes on the sideline. You said something about the play calling, though. I forget what game I was watching this past weekend or Monday night. I forget which one it was. And was it the Philly game? I don't know. It was one of those games. And I remember they were talking about play calling. And they
running into it too.
Well, there's one of the announcers said play calling is such an art form, right? Like
it is.
It's not literally just like, oh, here we go, let's run this, run that.
No, everybody can't do it.
Like, no, it really can't. And that's why I've gone back to, like, I've said this. I first broached it on this channel, I believe, on the Raiders post-game show. Even after a win, I said, should Darrell Bevell be the one calling plays for this team? And people looked at me like, oh, Reason, you're nuts. And I was like, well, now look at you now. Now everyone's like, huh. You know what I mean? And it was like, and even when you're winning, you can see things like situationally was driving me bonkers enough where it's like, you got to sit back and reflect about if you want to do this. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Well, because here's the thing. You fall into the trap. Well, you fall into the trap of this. You got situational issues, and you got play calling flaws of not committing to the run, conceptually with the designs only running 2 concepts, not being hot read friendly, et cetera, et cetera. But then you got times where he does call a coverage beater very well, and the guys just don't execute it. And so you got you see his potential. You see he made the right call. He brought out the right play, but then you see Tua or Tyreek or an offensive lineman doesn't execute and the play falls flat. So it's like such the, you see the growth, but then, the lack of growth gets highlighted just as much. Anyway, sorry, BallGame. Go ahead.
No, I just think, right, when you're thinking about where you're calling it from, right, being up in the box, man, gives you so much different perspective, bro. You can see the subtle nuances of, say, the safety walking down slowly and them adjusting to go rob, or to be a robber, or you can see the inside outside shade of the corners. You can see the over and under front actually where the guys go ahead and shift and they go from, from weak to strong, or they go from over to under, or even an even front. You can't see that stuff on the sideline. It's definitely impossible for a guy right there at that level to see what those linemen are doing or those linebackers are doing. But up in the box, you get to see all of that. And I just think, like, you can do himself such a service. It's still his offense, right? You don't have to be the guy calling the plays. Everybody knows that you brought the offense in, so you already get the acclaim for that. But it doesn't matter who's calling the plays. At the end of the day, it's supposed to be about the W. That's the only issue. I thought that this guy would, and I don't know. I'm just speculating. I hope he's not an ego guy. But at the same time, that's one of the biggest issues that head coaches have is their ego, man. And you can't be a big ego guy when you got to go out here and hope and pray that 22 other people execute what you're saying needs to be executed. Like you call the play. It's their job to execute it, but you need to be in the best position to have the best play called. And a lot of times, I just don't see how that's possible standing down there at ground level. It's just too much stuff going on, man. You got to deal with too much movement, trying to deal with the referees on a bad call. That's going to throw you off. If you're on defense and the defense gets a bad call and you got to go try to work the ref, how are you focusing on your offense? How are you getting ready for the next offensive set if you got to go down there and deal with a call on defense? All of these things, man, take away from him being able to get himself into that rhythm. And somebody should have been telling him that. Vic knew that. You're never going to see Vic on the sideline. And it's okay to let Bevel call the plays. He got to do something, man. Got to get out of his own way. Because at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? Or we don't have the time. We don't have the luxury. Tua's not a 12 to 14-year veteran like Aaron Rodgers was when LaFleur took over.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
who had been under guys like McCarthy and stuff like that too, right?
McCarthy yeah. Aaron could call he could run the offense himself without LaFleur's help.
That's true.
So that was a luxury, man.
Any thoughts for you, Richmond? Any more thoughts on that, or?
No, I do agree. I think it's got to be about, if everybody puts the team first, whether it's the players, the staff, whatever to come together collectively and win. I think that's the main thing. And I do agree when you're up in the press box, you can see it's almost, for the quarterbacks and stuff, they would always watch the wide copy. And we in offensive line, we watched the tight copy, which was from the end zone view, but we needed to see what was inside the box. We didn't necessarily have to always see what the corners were doing because that was our area that we were working in. So when you can see the whole picture and you might see it, and they might get you with a blitz or something, but you say, okay, when we line up in this formation again, if I see that, then I'll have him check out of this and we'll go that, and you can beat that. But when you at ground level, like you said, a lot of times you can't see it because he's maybe 6 foot. It'd be, if he was 25 feet tall, he could look up and see, but he can't. So I do agree that even if he's calling them, he needs somebody up in the press box saying, hey, this is what they're doing. We might want to go with this the next time we line up in this formation. This is why I said, bro, if we see that again, we need to check out of that to that. Send that in, and if Tua sees it, he can check out of it, this and that, and boom. And I think that's when you start to make growth. But you got to be able to communicate not only with the players, but with your staff, and everybody can be on one and be able to say the main thing to win is to win. So whether you come up with the idea, BallGame come up with it, or I come up with it, the main thing is we want to create success for the Miami Dolphins and not for BallGame, not for Richmond, or not for Reason. It's about the team. It's not about individuals. That's how I would approach it.
All right. So speaking of all this stuff, I want to read this article for everyone because it kind of sparks some outrage, and let's have a conversation about it. I'm going to bring it up here, and I'll read it for everyone, and we can get talking about it. Should the Miami Dolphins break up Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, the tandem, in 2024? He says, warning, potential side effects of this Dolphins column include anger and cognitive dissonance, but the medicine is needed because the same information will inform decisions made by the Dolphins this offseason. So brace yourselves for this truth. The Dolphins passing game this season didn't really work when both Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle were on the field. While both players are spectacular as individuals, Hill is expected to be Offensive Player of the Year, and Waddle is no doubt a top 20 receiver in the league. Collectively, their whole didn't come close to matching the sum of parts. Credit Hard Knocks in its finale for capturing Waddle's honest assessment of a Dolphins offense that scored 7 points Saturday against the Chiefs despite having their top two receivers, Tua Tagovailoa and Raheem Mostert, and Devin Achane all available. He said, and I quote, "Man, we can't put up 7 points because not in this type of game. Defense did all they could do, and we just didn't put up points. This shit is annoying as fuck. We're too talented to be doing this. If anything, defense should be struggling. They've got 11 new players." So when Miami Dolphins traded for Hill nearly 2 years ago, the Dolphins immediately became the fastest and most explosive receiving room in football. But there was always questions about skill overlap between Hill and Waddle. Traditionally, teams would pair a speed receiver with a big-bodied target. But given Tagovailoa's preference for throwing to fast, sudden players, the Dolphins tried a different path. Has it worked? Certainly. The offense production was way up in 2023 compared to before Hill got here. But there's compelling evidence that it could be even better with a roster modification. Of the 4 possible personnel groupings, both Waddle and Hill on the field, Waddle but not Hill on the field, Hill but Waddle but not Waddle on the field, and neither on the field, the splits are telling. Of course, the Dolphins' passing offense was at its worst when neither was on the field, but it was also worse in 2023 when both were on the field compared to just one of the two. So when both Tyreek and Hill were on the field, both Tyreek Hill and Waddle were on the field, they had 286 dropbacks. They were a 63.4 completion percentage, 2,138 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 8.2 yards per attempt, an 89.8 rating, total EPA of 34.1, pass EPA of 49.8, and a rush EPA of minus 13.52. With Hill on the field and all Waddle, completion percentage jumps to 70.8, 1,323 passing yards on only 180 dropbacks, 14 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 8.4 yards per attempt, a 112.9 rating, total EPA of 28.9, pass EPA of 31.7, and a run EPA of minus 0.96. When Waddle's on the field but not Hill, on 97 dropbacks, they had an 80.9% completion percentage, 713 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 8.4 yards per attempt, a 116.6 rating, a total EPA of 32.86, a pass EPA of 19.33, and a rush EPA of 15.03. And with neither on the field, it 77.3 completion percentage, 340 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 7 yards per attempt, 88.6 rating, minus 18.78 EPA, minus 9.12 pass EPA, and a 15.4 rush EPA. So how do we interpret these numbers? Again, there's no denying that the Dolphins passing offense was the least efficient in 2023 when both were on the bench. And the total and passing EPA stats are, of course, the most when both were on the field because that's the primary package. More snaps equals more higher EPA. But it's quite revealing that even though Waddle logged 84 fewer snaps than Hill in 2023, the Dolphins had a higher total EPA when Waddle was on the field and when Hill was not on, then vice versa. The biggest reason, the Dolphins' run game gets substantially worse when Hill is in the game. That's nothing new. It's been the reality all season. But the passing splits cannot be ignored. Miami's passing offense had a higher yards per attempt average and a much higher completion percentage and passer rating when one but not both were on the field. Certainly mitigating factors could be considered. It's hard to throw the ball on third down than on first and second. And on third downs are when your top 2 receivers are in the game. These stats also don't account for the quality of opponent. Hill played against every playoff team the Dolphins faced this year. Waddle did not. And yet, Miami's offense literally and figuratively froze in the biggest game of the year with both Hill and Waddle available. The Dolphins will spend the coming weeks and months trying to determine why. PFN asked Dolphins general manager Chris Greer Monday if it was safe to assume that the team didn't believe big changes were needed this offseason. This is his response. Yeah, I mean, we feel good about it, but like we said, this is 48 hours or less after a game still. We go through our process like we always talk about. Coaches are going to look through everything from spring through summer through the season. Personnel will go talk through everything and look at it through our lens. We'll get together. We'll talk about it, and exit interviews here will be a part of it. Mike will be meeting with the coaching staff, and then we'll all get together and we'll make appropriate decisions that we feel the need to make. So that's not exactly a yes. So while it's not the likeliest outcome, fans should mentally prepare themselves for at least the possibility that Waddle or Hill will be traded this offseason. And the smart money in that situation would be Waddle, not Hill, no matter what the advanced stats say. Hill is a 2-time reigning MVP and the NFL's leading receiver, no matter his salary. Dolphin fans would probably storm the Dolphins headquarters if he was dealt. So it's likely Waddle or no one, particularly since, look at this. Adam Beasley is reporting that Jaylen Waddle was quietly unhappy with his role in 2023. That's what it says right there. Says he likely wants a contract extension this offseason. And since Waddle entered the league in 2021, he ranks 15th league-wide in catches, 13th in receiving yards, 22nd in touchdowns, and 20th in defensive pass interference yards drawn. He's put together this impressive resume despite ranking 20th in targets. He'd be a number one receiver on more than half the league. The price is right, and any trade package has to include either star or for a first-round pick in return. Perhaps the Dolphins send Waddle to one of those teams this offseason. Now, I'm going to end it there. I'm going to stop it there. There's not much more to add from that article. Your guys' thoughts on this? Because, listen, I got a couple thoughts, and then I'll let you guys go. I think that's counterproductive to what we're building here, especially when you look at we're already $40 million over the cap. It's already looking we're going to be thin in terms of reinforcements behind Tyreek Hill. I mean, for God's sakes, they brought Anthony Schwartz and Braylon Sanders back on future contracts because they don't know Barrios ain't coming back. They're going to be able to afford that. They got to hope Izakama is healthy enough to play next year because we just don't have our money that we do free up is going to be allocated to strengthening the offensive line, re-signing players. They got to figure out what they're doing at edge, because guys are going to be out till November possibly, right? You know, you got to have money for your draft class. So listen, I think it's counterproductive. And I will say this too, gentlemen. Did we not learn in their first year together how they can coexist in this offense? They looked much more like 1A and 1B in year one than they did in year two. Year two, we were scheming the ball out quicker. It was one or two concepts, and usually Tyreek was the primary because he's the fastest guy. You know, this offense underwent a little bit of a change in terms of what they were doing this year, and I think Waddle's production suffered from it. I think, and also I'll say this too, gentlemen. This year, Tyreek Hill, he jumps to $34 million this season. Next year, right, 2025, he jumps to $56 million, and you've saved $45 million if you move off him post-June 1st. You don't got to be a mathematician to put that one together. You can't get rid of Waddle. BallGame, your thoughts on this situation? I think this is this is pretty premature for me where I'm at.
Yeah, you didn't put it together to bust it up. And they had to, as professionals, understand that bringing in a guy like Tyreek was going to affect the distribution of the ball. I think the problem became that he put out there prior to the season this whole notion of the 2000, and that once you put people in the energy in that direction, it's hard to reshift that direction back to balance across the board where you can be most effective. When they went extremely heavy. If you look at the yardage distribution between the two, I think Waddle hit 1,000 yards, but Tyreek was damn near 1,800. So that in itself is telling that they fed Tyreek more than Waddle, which can be also counterproductive. But you don't bust up one of the most deadly tandems in the league. I'm sure Tyreek, when the time comes, will take some type of restructure to make sure that some money is able to be moved around for the team. Right. But they gotta. I mean, there's all sorts of speculations about who should be gone and this, that, and the other. But you got to make sure that your quarterback is happy with the targets that you get, because then you're just guessing, right? And I do believe that Waddle is and will be the future 1A here. But I don't necessarily believe that he's ready yet to assume that role, and you can't even give him that role now that you got a Tyreek there in that place. Until Tyreek is gone, he just got to play Robin, man, Batman and Robin, and it is what it is. And if he's upset, then learn all the stuff that Tyreek does. So when Tyreek does go off the field, your productivity increases that much twofold as well. Because I noticed it myself that the way Mike schemed the game and the way he called the game was different when Tyreek wasn't on the field, and I never understood that because Waddle's extremely fast as well. So why are you limiting what he can do and how he does it by at any point, right? If they're 1A, 1B, they should be able to do the exact same things within your offense, and you not have to switch up and change it up because that makes you predictable at that point. Oh well, Tyreek went out. Oh, we got to play Waddle a little different now. Well, we're not gonna get as much motion. Well, let somebody else come in and do the motion, but that's not the same. You got your two fastest guys, right? If Tyreek's your fastest guy, and Waddle's your second fastest guy, then why are they both? There should be no drop off in that category. Waddle should know what Tyreek knows, and Tyreek should know what Waddle knows, so that the efficiency of the offense stays the same. But this is a problem that we knew we were going to have. You can't have two dynamic wide receivers like this, two alphas at the position, and not expect for one to be a little bit in their feelings about his productivity going down, because productivity affects the paycheck. But
yeah,
I'd rather have this problem. Right, I think they'll figure this out. You know what I mean? There's going to be a whole lot of decisions.
Well, isn't Waddle also the first? Isn't he the first Dolphin with 3 straight 1,000-yard plus receiving
1,000-yard season
to start? And I just did the math quickly for you, ball game, just so you know. This year during the regular season, I didn't do the playoff game. Waddle played 14 games. Hill played 16. Right? Waddle averaged about 7.43 targets a game. Hill averaged about 10.69 targets per game. So it's about a 3-target difference.
3-target difference, but you think, you think 25, 30-yard ball, you know what I'm saying, middle of the field, catches, right? That's 60, 70, that's 50, 60 yards. That adds up, right? And you think about the difference between, how many did Waddle end with? 1,100? He had about 1,100 yards. And then
he had this year, Waddle finished with 1,014 yards off 72 receptions.
And Tyreek had what?
1,799. Here you go though. Waddle,
1,800.
Waddle averaged 14.1 yards per catch. Tyreek averaged 15.1 yards per catch. So there's only a yard difference.
Yeah, a yard difference. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great breakdown by whoever wrote that, but at the end of the day, they'd be crazy. You brought the guys in here to shock the league and scare the shit out of them. The future contracts to Schwartz, if they can get him online and get something out of him, that's huge, because he's another speedster. But the Dolphins have to sit down with guys when they're doing these exit interviews and really have some tough conversations with guys about what their role is going to be moving forward on this team, like Claypool and all these guys. Claypool should have ever been, in my opinion, switched to tight end. Shouldn't have ever been switched to wide receiver. He was a tight end. That's where you were. That's where you cut your name in. That's where you got your name at in Notre Dame. So then the Bears decided to be smart and try to go through this process of making the guy that big who has limited route running ability a wide receiver. Like, you got to have some shiftedness to you. They call him, what do they call him, the vending machine? That's not a good nickname for a wide receiver. I don't give a shit who's talking about it. You don't want a wide receiver to be a vending machine. You ever seen a vending machine ever juke anybody out? No, it's just big, right? Yeah. So go back. You know what I'm saying? He can make his name. He could reinvent himself in this league by going back to what he should have been doing all along, being a tight end. And then they can figure out the rest. But as far as splitting up the tandem, man, you got Batman and Robin. You got to keep that together as long as possible. And I'm sure they can get Tyreek in. He's a team guy to renegotiate those couple final years, so he ain't busting us over the head.
What do you think, Richmond, on this situation? You played with some big, good receivers during your time. How do you see this?
I think BallGame. I think both of y'all agreed, and I agree. I think when the focus this year kind of shifted so much on trying to get him to be the 2,000-yard receiver, I think that was a direction a lot of times we took, rather than just going through the game plan and saying, okay, Tyreek, this guy's going to be covering you most of the game. Waddle, this guy's going to be covering you. We figure we can pick on this guy over here and take advantage of the matchups and the mismatch. You still feed both guys, but it should be, depending on who's guarding who, we should be able to win. And you should be able to say that in a team meeting, and say, hey, we coming to you this week because we don't think this guy can cover you. And that way you just run the offense rather than saying, let's try to get this guy, make sure he gets this and that. And then to Waddle's deal, like you said, I think he's looking and saying like he's an alpha, this and that. He said, look, I done proven. I know I can play. I know I can make plays. Y'all need to get me the ball too. And so I don't have an issue with that. I just think that, come together collectively and say, okay, what is it going to take for us to win? Let's get on that. And that's what we're going to do. Even with like Claypool. I mean, I think when they signed him, the first thing the Dolphins should tell him, say, look, we want to sign you, but we don't want to sign you as a wide receiver. You were a tight end. We want to use you in this offensive tight end. If we use you here, your production is really going to go up because that's what you were really efficient at in college. So we're going to put you in a position to make you have the most success you possibly can have. And now, if he didn't want to do that or whatever, then maybe we don't make that trade because as a general manager, they're going to look and say, look, we know you can play receiver, but you're a much better tight end. So I think those are some of the conversations sometimes they got to be had on the front end, but I wouldn't bust up this tandem. I would figure out a way to try to get both guys. It shouldn't be that much one-sided unless one guy was hurt for 6 or 7 games, and that would justify the difference in the production. But like you said, one guy is 15 yards a catch, one's 14, this and that. I think, we throw the ball enough to where both guys can be happy and we can have 2 of the top receivers in the league for another year or 2. But eventually it's going to come to a point to where you got to make a decision to say, do we keep both or do, we let one go, this and that? And I don't think that decision becomes this offseason, but we got to figure out a way to get both of them involved because it doesn't make sense to have those type of weapons and then don't utilize them to your advantage.
Mm-hmm. I think you guys are mixing it up, right? He's a receiver that we're converting to tight end. Just so
he was a receiver at
Notre Dame. Yeah, he's a receiver at Notre Dame in Pittsburgh, and we're converting him to tight end. We're converting him into what we're doing with Izakama, right? So just FYI, I think you guys
my bad.
We're brain farting. That's all. Okay, so I got one thing I want to cover and a curveball. Just looking at the time here for you guys. Let's start off with the curveball because I've been one of those people that has been adamant that Danny Crossman should be gone for the last couple of years. So we got these special teams rankings here, guys, and they're done by a guy named Rick Goslin. He's been doing special team unit rankings for 38 years. He uses over 20 different metrics to gather, these rankings to come up with these rankings. He just released his 2023 rankings, and guys, it's not good. That's all I'm going to say here, right? So he's been covering the NFL for 50 years. He's a Hall of Fame voter. This is a guy who just understands special teams to a next level, all right? So using his metrics, the Miami Dolphins, they ranked out special teams wise, gentlemen, 31st in the NFL.
Yeah.
31st. And now check this out. This is where we're going to get it. Okay, so here are the categories, right? In punt returns. In kickoff coverage. The Dolphins were the worst in the NFL in kick coverage, allowing about 30.5 yards. All right? Check this out. The Dolphins were the worst in the league in terms of their offense's starting point. It's about the 26.6 yard line. League average is 25.2. All right. This is a guy who knows what he's talking about when it comes. And, listen, we'll talk about Tua. We talk about McDaniel on the way, on that 3 game stretch there at the end there. But we also, it was a matter of where even special teams was having key breakdowns in terms of go to the Ravens game, right? Open in the second half. We allow that kickoff return, all the way down deep into our side of the field. Then we allow Buffalo with the punt return of the touchdown. what are your guys' thoughts on this? Do you think special teams, which is because guys, I thought Barrios wasn't just underwhelming from a standpoint of no one stepped up and occupied that wide receiver role, but I thought he was pretty underwhelming special teams wise. It felt like he could have offered more, and there was more in the tank there. What do you guys see a change coming to special teams this offseason?
I think. I think you're always judged. You're always evaluated as a player, and you should be always evaluated as a coach. And when I was at the Dolphins, I'm pretty sure the majority of the time, Mike Westhoff, which was one of the best in the game, I think he's working as an analyst or something with the Broncos now, but he was one of the best in the game. And I can remember even when Jimmy Johnson was here, he says 3 phases to the game: offense, defense, and special teams. And he said we will always win special teams. And I think a lot of people don't look at it, but that can actually cost you a game or two by not being as efficient on one of the better teams on special teams. So I'm sure if this guy's looking at it, like you said, he's a Hall of Fame voter. He's done this over 50 years. It carries weight when your analytics, you put it out there like that. So I think it is something. Could they keep him? They could, but I think it's definitely going to be, he's probably on the hot seat or whatever. If we're going to continue to make progress and do what's best for the team, I think, his name probably will come up. And then
Well, he's also not Mike's guy, right? He was here before Mike got here.
It don't matter. I guess you got in this league, you got to produce, and if you don't produce, you got to get rid of it. It's kind of like Buffalo made the change in offensive coordinator this season. I don't think it's you got an issue with them, but you got to do what's best for the team at times, and sometimes you got to make those hard decisions, and that's part of being the head coach. That's part of being the GM. That's not that you don't like the guy, but for some reason it's just not working, and sometimes you got to just go in a different direction. So if they're talking about the rebuild not being successful, this and that, if we look over a period of years, and not just this year, but if they look at it's been underperforming or hadn't been up to standard, that's something you got to look at and possibly make a change. So I'm sure he will be looking at that.
Yeah, and he should be fired for signing off on Jake Bailey alone. The punter. You should be fired for signing off on the punter alone. Go ahead, buddy.
He's got to go. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can't be A+. We can't be A- and B+ in offense and defense, and then be an F on special teams. No matter how you put that out, that GPA is gonna suck. So something's got to change. You got to find somebody that's willing to reinvigorate that whole process too. Because it's still today, I still haven't seen a special teams group that's really actually felt like that's a part of something that's vital for the success of this team. Like, the guys just go out there and just go through the motions, and
yeah.
a lot of this stuff, for me, people still don't feel. I don't know why people don't understand it, but a lot of these guys really find time. You think that the paychecks will be enough motivation for them and the W's, but sometimes they need to be motivated. They need guys that are willing to freaking get in the, get in their ass and tell them to do their freaking jobs, right? And hold them accountable. And I haven't seen it. We haven't seen it from Danny, man, at all. So he may be a nice guy, you know what I'm saying? He may be the best dude to hang out with him, but as far as special teams coordinator, that don't mean shit. He's not the guy. He got to go. And find some guys. And also a part of the whole thing with the special team, man. Guys gotta love doing that shit. Also, right? It takes a special type of individual to go out there and run down there on special teams and engage and block and all.
Takes a crazy man to be a career gunner in the NFL.
Yeah, and you can't just just say, oh, well, hell, you the backup linebacker, so go do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hell, he's a backup for a reason. But he ain't going to be a spirit of going down there and doing that job. You need some crazy people doing crazy jobs. You know what I mean? And if they really want to be the best of the best, you got to find some guys willing to go down there and do the dirty work, man. But your coordinator got to have an eye for that shit, too. And this guy going and getting Jake Bailey, that sealed it for me. And when Bailey gone, send this motherfucker right along with him. Sorry for the language out there for y'all that got kids, but he got to go, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Can't be mediocre, man. Especially they get an F for me in that category in the special teams, and your offense and defense are trending up. With gotta go. Gotta go.
Finally, here before we get into final thoughts, 15 fans hospitalized after the Dolphins and Chiefs game. According to a report from Fox 4 in Kansas City, the Kansas City Fire Department said emergency responders received dozens of calls relating to hypothermia and frostbite. Apparently, 7 were treated for hypothermia and 3 for frostbite. To be specific, it received 69 calls. Nice. From Arrowhead Stadium. Listen, guys, I mean, they moved the Buffalo game because they were worried about fan safety. Sure doesn't sound like at the end of the day they were worried about fan safety. They were worried more about that peacock money. That's what it seemed like they were a little bit more worried about. Your guys' thoughts on that whole peacock and that whole fiasco?
Yeah, I wasn't really happy about it. I had to subscribe. I just did it for 1 month to Peacock so I could watch the game. The NFL is about money, so it wasn't surprising. I mean, they've always played the cold games for whatever reason. I don't know why the Buffalo game was changed. That kind of surprised me, but it's actually, I tell people all the time, it's actually worse sitting in the stands than being on the sideline of the game, because at least we can move around. We got the heated bench. You got heaters out there. You got you got coats. You got coats, but when you just sitting in one spot, you can't move around and this and that, and that just wears on you. I mean, you can fill your flask up if you want, but that's real dangerous temperatures when it's getting that cold out there to sit out there. The game is 3 hours, but imagine just the time from parking, trying to get in the stadium, leaving the stadium, this and that. That's a long time to be out in those type of elements of weather. If you live there, sometimes your body is more tolerant to it. Not saying you can't still get frostbite or hypothermia, but if you're coming and you're not used to that weather, you can definitely end up really doing some damage. And so it's not surprising to me at all. Just you just got to be smart, and if it gets too cold and you can't watch it, it's better to leave and try to go find a sports bar or something, or somewhere you can tuck up in and get warm, rather than sit out there and lose a limb, a toe, or finger, or something like that. It ain't that serious, but yeah, it's not surprising that they had that many calls, because that was brutal.
Yeah. What do you think, BallGame?
I mean, I think anytime you put people's safety at risk, man, just to generate money, it's always going to be a bad situation across the board. But it doesn't surprise me what the NFL did. So I think people have to be really smart people have to be smart for themselves, because ultimately the business ain't going to be worrying about nothing but the business. So I had a buddy of mine, like we laugh and giggle about it now to this day, but we went to the high desert in California on one of the coldest December nights ever recorded. Sat out by the fire till about 2 a.m. I decided to get up, go inside. My trailer was probably about 91 degrees inside of it, because it was a -6 outside when we were sitting out there around that fire, right? We sitting out there drinking, and I don't drink anymore, of course, but now he's sitting out there drinking and I fell asleep out there with them steel toe boots on. Next morning, got up. You got to go to the hospital, baby. You done lost that big toe. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we have to be smarter for ourselves and not rely on other people to do certain things. So, any of those people, I hope they're recovering well. I hope they learn their lesson that, fandom is one thing, but common sense, that should rule out a whole lot of bad decisions. Hell, them stands would have been empty. They've been up to me. I'm not going to watch the Dolphins in that type of weather. Crazy hell, not me.
Well, what did you guys think about this? Because I haven't talked about this. What did you guys think about this? The timeout when Mahomes broke his helmet from the Elliott how they didn't force them to take a timeout. They just let him go over there and change his helmet. That was kind of suspect, no? You're muted.
You get that
Okay,
kind of
my
treatment
bad.
when you're the golden boy. At the end of the day, man, anybody within the conversation know without shadow of doubt that Pat Mahomes is the face of the NFL right now. So there's a lot of things that he's going to be able to do and get away with, like yelling at those referees when they lost that game, and all up in dude's face. That would have been any other quarterback in the league probably would have been fined or a huge fine. The organization would have been fined, but they didn't say anything to him about any of that because he's the face of the NFL. Now, most people might not believe this, but they want Tua to be that also. If you remember back in some of our the Hard Knocks thing, the referee told him, "Hey man, good to see you, bro. Keep doing what you're doing. We need you. We need you." They told Tua that we need you. They want him to be the next guy up, but it's a team game. Individually, you can love a player, but at the end of the day, some guys gonna get preferential treatment. We're still human beings at the end of the day, and these guys are these referees are also fans. Let's not forget that, right? Look how many of them have gone down and lost their careers or got penalized behind betting on games because they believe so much in the teams to go out and achieve different levels of success. You know what I mean? They fans too at heart. They just happen to be right there in close proximity doing the job that most of us wish we had and had the ability to do as well. So I don't put nothing past it, man. I mean, when I saw that, I looked over at my son, Kevin Jr., and I was like, hey, man, this is par for the course, baby. You know what I mean? And just keep it pushing because it's Pat Mahomes. You know?
What do you think, Richmond?
Yeah, and I can't keep up with the rules, but I thought when you have equipment fail like that, I thought he possibly would have had to come out the game. Do that. He walked halfway and they brought a helmet out from just another guy and he threw it on his head, and I was like, you would think you would have to call a timeout. That's the first time I seen something like that, but you could blatantly see that it was seriously cracked. It was a big chip missing out the helmet. And then the other thing was, it's just like all our heads are probably different sizes. If I grab your helmet, I might get it on, but is it fitting to where it's protecting me, safely? The guy come in there and sack him or whatever, he could have really got hurt. So I was kind of like, I can't believe they let that happen, but they did. So it is. But BallGame is right. When you become one of the guys, they will let you get away with it, and it's typically the quarterbacks, the top-notch quarterback. They can sell a little bit more to the refs than what a guy like a lineman or something. Maybe if you're somebody like Ray Lewis or something like that, you can talk to him a bit. Yeah, Pat Mahomes, he's definitely one of the top quarterbacks in the league. So they'll give him some leniency as far as letting some stuff off his chest, stuff like that. But everybody can't do that.
Yeah. All right. Here's the deal, guys. Tomorrow we reverse things a little bit. Tomorrow I'm going to be back. I'm going to be back around 2 p.m. with Omar Kelly, and we got some good topics to discover. Cover 4 podcast turned into cover 6 this time around, but we will be live tomorrow on 2 p.m. Then I will be live in the day on Friday. That's when me and Neil will be live and getting it on for all of y'all with another episode of Fin Too Deep. Thanks to the fact that now Neil is no longer on X or Twitter, and you'll only be able to hear his opinions on Finside the NFL thanks to him deleting his Twitter account after that loss. So you'll hear from him. Obviously, we're probably going to have that preseason roundtable coming up sooner than later with all the boys to go over our predictions and how that ended, how the season ended, all that kind of jazz. Obviously, we'll have Dolphins After Dark coming too. So we got a lot of content coming your guys' way. Do us a favor, smash the like button. Quickly, BallGame, you have something to add? You're muted.
Who you got this weekend?
Who do I want or who I got?
I had some upsets. I was right on a couple of my upsets this past weekend, so I'm picking one more.
Yeah, you got Baltimore losing?
Yes, sir. I sure do.
Um,
But I got Kansas City taking care of the Bills. I got Green Bay giving. I got Green Bay actually. I think LaFleur got Shanahan's number, man.
oh, really? You think that, eh?
Them boys too young, man. The boys are so young they don't know what they don't know.
I think
That's a
think
dangerous
if
team.
I think if San Francisco loses, there are going to be serious changes coming down the pipeline. I think it's going to be Texans, Niners, Lions, Chiefs. I think we're going to see another run from Mahomes here. They've got confidence now. Rashee Rice is becoming the guy for them to lean on. I think they found their way a little bit, and they're finding their stride right now, and they could be potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
So,
I don't
and
see-
we know
I think
Bills don't
I
lose.
think Green Bay's
Bills
got
don't win.
yeah. LaFleur has Shanahan's number, man. Them guys know each other too well, bro. And like that's a scary team. Them young teams, they don't have any fear, man. They don't know what they don't know, so they go in and just play.
Yeah,
Richmond can attest to that. Those are the teams that you really don't want to see because they ain't got shit to lose. They weren't supposed to be there in the first place. You feel me?
Yeah.
So,
all right, guys, smash that like button, subscribe for new, and I will see y'all tomorrow in the day. Fins up. See y'all on the next one.